Hello everyone. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is the safety of solid ground, your comfort zone, the familiar routines that you know so well. In front of you is a vast open space, unfamiliar, maybe even intimidating. That space represents your potential, all the things you've dreamed of achieving but haven't yet dared to pursue. Why is it that so many of us choose to stay on that solid ground, clinging to comfort, when the path to growth and greatness lies just ahead? Let me start with a question. How many of you have felt stuck at some point in your life? Perhaps in your job, in your relationships, or even in your own mindset. We've all been there, right? That sense of feeling comfortable, but also unfulfilled. It's human nature to seek comfort. It's wired into us for survival. But here's the paradox. Comfort can be the very thing that holds us back from true growth. Philosophers for centuries have grappled with this dilemma. The Stoics, in particular, had something to say about it. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught that discomfort is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced. He said, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them." In other words, it's not the act of stepping out of your comfort zone that's harmful. It's the fear we attach to it. The more we fear discomfort, the more we limit ourselves to a life that is smaller than it could be. Let's think about this in practical terms. Every great achievement in history, whether it's in science, art, or personal development, came from someone who was willing to push beyond their boundaries. Imagine if Thomas Edison had said, "Inventing the light bulb is too hard, too uncomfortable. I'll just stick to what I know." Or if Rosa Parks had said, "Challenging injustice? That's too risky. I'll stay in my place." The world would be a much darker and less just place. In philosophy, particularly in existentialism, thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Friedrich Nietzsche often spoke about the necessity of breaking free from self-imposed limitations. Sartre famously declared that man is condemned to be free. By this, he meant that we are responsible for creating meaning and value in our own lives. But that creation requires action. It requires us to break out of the safety net that keeps us static. Nietzsche took it a step further with his concept of the Übermensch, or Overman, someone who transcends ordinary human existence by embracing challenges and pushing past their limits. Both of these philosophers understood that human potential is unlocked through discomfort. So, what does this mean for us today? Let's be honest. Stepping outside of your comfort zone is hard. It's uncomfortable, it's scary, and sometimes it's downright painful. But that discomfort is where the magic happens. It's where growth happens. Consider this. When you work out at the gym, you're putting your muscles under stress, causing small tears in the fibers. Those tears heal, and your muscles become stronger. In the same way, every time you stretch beyond your comfort zone, whether it's by learning a new skill, taking a risk in your career, or simply trying something unfamiliar, you're creating micro tears in the fabric of your life. And just like in the gym, those tears lead to growth and strength. Here's another philosophical concept for you. The idea of amor fati, or love of fate, something that was central to Stoic thinking. The Stoics believed that everything that happens to us, whether it's good or bad, is an opportunity for growth. When you step outside your comfort zone, you're embracing fate. You're saying, "I'm ready for whatever comes my way." Instead of shrinking from challenges, you welcome them as a necessary part of your journey. This mindset is transformational because it allows you to approach life not with fear, but with curiosity and courage. But let's take this out of the realm of ancient philosophy for a moment and bring it back to something practical. How do we actually start stepping outside our comfort zones? It doesn't have to be a giant leap off the metaphorical cliff. Sometimes, it's about taking small, consistent steps. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting when you'd usually stay quiet. Maybe it's signing up for a class that intimidates you. Or perhaps it's something as simple as striking up a conversation with someone new. Every small step outside your comfort zone expands it. And soon, what once felt impossible becomes second nature. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. But what if I fail? Here's the truth. You will fail. And that's okay. Every philosopher, every leader, every successful person in history has faced failure. What matters is not the failure itself, but how you respond to it. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic philosopher, often reminded himself that the obstacles we encounter are opportunities for growth. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the challenges we face are not roadblocks. They are the very path to progress. Failure, discomfort, uncertainty. These are all part of the journey. And each time you push past them, you build resilience, you gain confidence, and you grow into a stronger, more capable version of yourself. But none of that can happen if you stay rooted in comfort. Comfort is like a warm, cozy blanket on a cold day. It feels good. It feels safe. But if you stay wrapped in it for too long, you never get out and experience the world. So, I ask you today, what are you holding onto that's keeping you stuck? What comfort zone are you clinging to that's preventing you from reaching your full potential? It's time to let go. It's time to step out, even if it's just a small step, and embrace the unknown, because that's where true growth happens. Remember, the goal isn't to be fearless. Fear is a natural part of life. The goal is to act in spite of fear, to acknowledge it and move forward anyway. As the Stoics would say, you are not harmed by the discomfort itself, but by your judgment of it. Once you change how you perceive that discomfort, you'll find that the limits you've set for yourself were never real to begin with. In conclusion, I encourage you to challenge yourself today, tomorrow, and every day after that. Push the boundaries of what feels comfortable, and you'll be amazed at how far you can go. Growth lies just beyond the edge of that comfort zone. Take the step, and you'll find yourself capable of more than you ever imagined. Now, I'd like to delve deeper into the other side of this equation, the danger that comes from staying too comfortable. In other words, let's talk about why comfort, while soothing, can actually lead to stagnation. Let me start by asking you this. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you felt stuck? Not because you lacked ability, but because you were too comfortable to change? Maybe it was in your career, where you didn't pursue a promotion because your current role felt safe. Or maybe it was in a relationship that wasn't growing, but the idea of change seemed too daunting. Comfort can be like quicksand. It feels solid, but the longer you stay in one place, the more it pulls you down, keeping you from moving forward. If you look closely, many philosophers and thinkers have warned us about this very phenomenon. Let's start with Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher who wrote about the leap of faith. He believed that life is full of moments where we have to make bold, sometimes frightening decisions to move forward. Kierkegaard called out the dangers of what he termed inauthentic living, a state where people remain in comfort, avoiding risk and deeper meaning. According to him, staying in a comfort zone is living passively, and that's not truly living at all. It's merely existing. We might wake up, go through the motions, and even enjoy some temporary pleasures. But without challenges, without discomfort, we become stagnant. Our lives lack real purpose or direction. Now, think about that for a moment. Are you living, or are you just existing? Let's bring in another voice from philosophy, Aristotle. Aristotle spoke about eudaimonia, a term that is often translated as human flourishing, or the good life. For Aristotle, flourishing wasn't about comfort or ease. It was about realizing one's full potential, which could only happen through effort, struggle, and growth. You don't achieve eudaimonia by sitting on the couch, enjoying the pleasures of a comfortable life. You achieve it by pushing yourself, by working towards something greater, even when it's hard. And here lies the crux of the matter. When you stay in your comfort zone, you prevent yourself from flourishing. Sure, it feels nice to stay where things are predictable and safe, but by avoiding discomfort, you are also avoiding opportunities. And opportunities, as we all know, don't come knocking forever. Stagnation, in this sense, is a thief. It steals from us the chance to become who we are meant to be. Let's consider a simple but powerful metaphor: water. Water that flows is fresh. It nourishes life. It carves through rocks, creating new pathways. But stagnant water, it becomes foul. It breeds decay, and it loses its vitality. The same is true for us. When we are constantly moving, learning, growing, we remain vibrant and full of life. But when we sit still, we begin to stagnate. The energy drains from us. We may not notice it at first, but over time, our lives become smaller, our minds become closed, and our potential remains locked away. This idea brings us to an important philosophical distinction between comfort and contentment. Many people mistake the two, but comfort is about the avoidance of discomfort, the desire to keep things easy and predictable. Contentment, on the other hand, is a deeper sense of satisfaction that comes from growth, progress, and overcoming challenges. You don't find contentment in stagnation. You find it through struggle and achievement. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius often reminds us to act, to move forward, despite the obstacles in our path. He believed that obstacles are not just barriers. They are part of the process. In fact, he said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." It's a powerful reminder that challenges are not something to fear, but something to embrace. They are the very thing that keeps us from stagnating. Without them, we would simply remain in the same place mentally and emotionally. Let's bring this idea into a more practical light. Think of any skill you've mastered in your life. Perhaps it's playing an instrument, learning a sport, or developing a professional expertise. If you never pushed yourself to improve, if you never faced the discomfort of making mistakes, you'd never have reached any level of proficiency. The same applies to your personal development. Without pushing yourself, without venturing into new territory, your skills, your relationships, your intellect, all of it will stagnate. Another philosopher who touched on this idea is Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche famously said, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." Now, he wasn't just talking about physical endurance. He was speaking to the very essence of human growth. Nietzsche believed that the greatest achievements come from the struggle against our limitations. Comfort, in his view, was the enemy of greatness. He challenged us to embrace life's difficulties, because only through them could we transcend our current selves. But let's pause for a moment. Why, then, do we stay in our comfort zones? Why do we choose stagnation over growth? It's simple fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, and sometimes, even the fear of success. These fears can be so deeply ingrained that we don't even realize they are holding us back. Instead, we rationalize our inaction. We say, "I'm not ready," or "I'll try tomorrow." But tomorrow turns into next week, next year, and eventually never. This brings me to the existential philosophers, particularly Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre argued that humans have an inherent freedom to choose, and with that freedom comes responsibility. When we choose comfort, we are actively choosing to limit ourselves. Sartre called this living in bad faith, where we lie to ourselves, pretending that our choices don't matter, when in reality, they shape our entire existence. To avoid this, we must take ownership of our choices, even if they lead us into discomfort. Now, how do we overcome this? How do we fight against the natural pull of comfort and push ourselves into the unknown? The answer lies in intentionality. You have to make a conscious decision to seek growth, even when it's uncomfortable. You have to challenge yourself to try new things, to take risks, and to face failure head-on. One technique you might find helpful is something from cognitive behavioral therapy, a modern psychological practice with roots in Stoicism. It's called exposure therapy. Essentially, you expose yourself to small amounts of discomfort over time, gradually increasing your tolerance. The more you step into discomfort, the less intimidating it becomes. And the more you do this, the more your comfort zone expands. Instead of shrinking, your life begins to grow. You become capable of more than you ever thought possible. In closing, I want you to reflect on this. What are you avoiding in your life right now because it's uncomfortable? Is it a difficult conversation? A career change? Learning a new skill? Whatever it is, know that the longer you stay in your comfort zone, the harder it will be to break free. Stagnation doesn't announce itself. It creeps in slowly. But the good news is, you always have the power to make a different choice. You can choose growth over comfort, movement over stagnation, and action over inaction. Remember, comfort may feel good in the short term, but in the long term, it can trap you in a life that's smaller than you deserve. We've talked about stepping outside of our comfort zones. And we've explored the dangers of stagnation. Now, It's time to take this conversation to its natural conclusion: the role of risk in personal and professional growth. After all, if we're going to escape the pull of comfort and avoid stagnation, we must be willing to embrace risk as a necessary part of progress. So let me ask you this. What is your relationship with risk? Do you avoid it? Or do you seek it out? For many of us, risk is something we shy away from. It feels unsafe, unpredictable, and we tend to associate risk with loss or failure. But here's the thing. Risk is essential for progress. It's the key to unlocking your potential. And without it, you remain in the same place, unable to reach the next level of growth. Philosophers throughout history have spoken about the necessity of risk. One of the most famous quotes on this subject comes from the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who said, "Great deeds are usually wrought at great risks." In other words, no significant achievement has ever come without someone taking a chance. Think about the explorers who ventured across unknown seas, the scientists who challenged accepted truths, or the entrepreneurs who risked their livelihoods on a dream. All of them faced uncertainty, but they embraced it because they understood that risk is not just a possibility of failure, it's also the possibility of success. Let's ground this idea in philosophy. One of the key tenets of existentialism, a school of thought led by thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, is the belief that life's meaning is not predetermined. Instead, it's something we create through our actions, choices, and willingness to face uncertainty. Sartre famously said, "Man is condemned to be free." He meant that we are constantly faced with choices, and it is up to us to shape our lives through the decisions we make, even when those decisions carry risk. There is no growth without choice, and no choice without risk. But here's where it gets interesting. Risk is not the enemy. In fact, when you reframe risk, you see it as a catalyst for personal development. You might fail, yes, but every failure is an opportunity to learn, to improve, and to try again. Stoic philosophers understood this better than most. Take Seneca, for instance, who wrote extensively about risk and loss. He believed that fortune favors the bold, and that only those willing to risk discomfort and adversity would ever achieve greatness. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." This brings us to a profound truth. The more we avoid risk, the more difficult life becomes. When you constantly shy away from risk, you limit your growth and potential. You start to believe that you're not capable of handling challenges, and this mindset can become self-fulfilling. On the other hand, when you embrace risk, you develop resilience, confidence, and strength. You prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty, and in doing so, you expand what is possible for you. Let's think of a practical example. Imagine you've been offered a new job opportunity that challenges you, something beyond your current skill set. It's exciting, but also terrifying. Taking this job would mean leaving the familiar, stepping into unknown territory, and risking failure. It's a classic comfort zone dilemma. Many people faced with this scenario would stick with the safer option, their current job, where they know the ropes. But what's the cost of staying safe? The cost is stagnation. By avoiding the risk, you deny yourself the chance to grow. Sure, you might avoid temporary discomfort or failure, but in the long run, you miss out on the potential rewards, new skills, new experiences, and possibly a more fulfilling career. Risk, in this context, is not a gamble. It's a necessary step toward progress. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if I fail? What if the risk doesn't pay off? This is where a Stoic mindset can be incredibly powerful. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, taught that we cannot control the outcomes of our actions, but we can control our response to them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, we must focus on what we can control, our effort, our mindset, and our willingness to act, and let go of the fear of failure. Failure is not the end, it's part of the journey. And let's be clear, failure is not something to be feared. Every failure carries with it the seeds of future success. Consider Thomas Edison, who famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he reportedly said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's story is a perfect example of someone who embraced risk, knowing that each setback was simply part of the process of discovery and growth. Without those risks, there would have been no breakthrough. Let's turn back to philosophy for a moment. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, introduced the concept of the will to power, which essentially means the drive to overcome challenges and achieve personal greatness. Nietzsche believed that this drive was the essence of life itself. According to him, individuals who embrace challenges and risks are the ones who grow and evolve, whereas those who avoid them remain weak and stagnant. Nietzsche's Übermensch, or overman, was someone who continually sought to surpass themselves, to grow beyond their limitations, regardless of the risks involved. But it's important to note that risk doesn't mean recklessness. Philosophers like Aristotle emphasized the need for practical wisdom, the ability to assess a situation, weigh the potential risks and rewards, and make a well-reasoned decision. The goal isn't to leap blindly into the unknown, but to take calculated risks. That's the key distinction. Risks are not meant to be taken without thought, but they must be taken. Practical wisdom helps you decide when a risk is worth it and when it's not. But the answer can't always be play it safe. Now, let's reflect on a fundamental truth. Comfort is fleeting. You might think that staying in your comfort zone keeps you safe, but life is inherently unpredictable. Even if you don't take risks, life will still throw challenges your way. The difference is, when you've practiced taking risks, when you've built up the resilience and courage that come from facing uncertainty, you'll be better equipped to handle whatever life throws at you. Risk, then, is a kind of training. It prepares you for the inevitable challenges of life by making you stronger, more adaptable, and more resourceful. In closing, I want to leave you with one final thought. Progress and comfort cannot coexist. If you want to grow, if you want to achieve anything of significance, you must embrace risk. There will be moments of doubt, fear, and even failure. But in those moments, you will find the opportunity for growth. You will discover strength you didn't know you had. And as you face more and more risks, you'll find that your capacity for success expands, along with your willingness to take on new challenges. So ask yourself, what risks are you avoiding today that could lead to the greatest rewards tomorrow? What comfort are you clinging to that is holding you back from becoming the person you are meant to be? Thank you